Let's bring in the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. Senator Menendez, thank you very much for being with us. Let's talk about this very alarming report from the British government. Obviously, the British government is not going to put out that kind of information unless they're pretty confident in what they're talking about here. What would be the ramifications of Putin trying to install a puppet government in Ukraine? This would be very destabilizing for the region.
It certainly would, and obviously these people seem to be willing to be traitors to their country. This is why the U.S. government recently sanctioned a series of individuals who they found working with the FSB, the Russian intelligence, because of exactly these types of actions. And so, Ukraine faces a series of threats. Of course, the 100,000 plus troops along three elements of its border, the cyber attacks, the attempts to create an internal coup. So it's in this respect, it's besieged. And this is why, coming together and both sending it defensive equipment and internationalizing the opposition to any invasion by Putin is so critical at this moment.
And now that this plan and the reports of the false flag operation, those plans, now that those are all out in the open, what does it do in terms of changing Putin's approach in all of this, do you think? One of the questions that I have is Putin just benefiting from this domestically, politically, by having everybody revved up and spun up about all of these various potential plots? Or do you think he is moving in the direction of putting these kinds of plans in motion?
Well, no one knows for sure what Putin is thinking. I will say this, that clearly whenever he can detract attention from the domestic challenges that exist inside of Russia, both on COVID and economics and other things, and turn the Russian people's attention elsewhere, he's buying himself time. Of course, we know, because if you read Putin's speeches, you have a pretty good view of what his master plan is. His greatest lament is the dissolution of what was the Soviet Union. His greatest desire is to recreate it. In this regard, you have to look at the troop buildup as one of two things. Either he's going to have some type of an invasion fully to try to take over Ukraine, or partially to continue to destabilize it and not put it in the orbit of the West, or to use all of this for leverage with the United States and the West to find some type of security guarantees that he says that he needs. We don't know which one of those it is, but we will know in short order, because in the next week, the United States is responding to his positions in writing. The British foreign minister is supposed to be visiting Lavrov in Russia in February. That's a little over a week away. So I think we're going to have a pretty good sense of which way this is going to go. Is it conflict that Putin chooses? And then if he does, how many body bags does he want to count going back to Russia, of Russia's sons? Or is it a off-ramp and a diplomatic solution that deals with security guarantees?
And I assume you are supportive of these efforts that we're seeing televised of weapons and shipments and so on going into Ukraine in the event that the Ukrainians have to defend themselves against a Russian invasion. It sounds as though what the United States and our allies are saying to Putin is that if you do this, we're going to make sure you get bogged down in something ugly.
Well, absolutely. Over 200 million of the expedited monies, not the monies, the equipment, arrived in Kiev today. They include Javelin missiles that can stop Russian tanks, or rocket launchers, grenade launchers, and other critical equipment that adds on to the 600 million that's already been provided to Ukraine in these types of equipments. And it makes it very clear. This is not the Ukraine that you took over in Crimea. This is a different Ukraine today. It is better prepared. You may ultimately, because of the size of your military, overrun the country, but at what cost? Because the cost will be extremely high in the number of Russian soldiers that will be killed, and the cost to Putin and Russia and all of its sectors of its economy with the sanctions that we have previewed, which are different than the typical sanctions that everybody talks about. These are, as I call it, the mother of all sanctions, and would have lasting economic consequences to Russia. So this is what Putin has to be part of calibrating it all, and we'll see whether his desire to recreate what was the Soviet Union is greater than saving Russian soldiers' lives and saving the economy of his people.
And let me ask you about some domestic political issues that have come up. Earlier today, the Arizona Democratic Party's executive board censured your colleague, Senator Kyrsten Sinema, because she refused to support changing the filibuster rules to help pass voting legislation. Senator Sanders said he's open to backing primary challengers against both Senator Sinema and Senator Joe Manchin. Where do you stand on all of this? Are you comfortable with local Democratic parties censuring some of your colleagues if they don't go along with beefing up voting rights in this country?
Well, look, each member of the Senate, all 100, had an opportunity to cast a vote and say where they stood on voting rights. I voted to ensure that the most essential element of our democracy, the right of each and every individual to vote, is not only guaranteed but further enhanced. And I regret that Senator Sinema did not take the step necessary to ensure that, because while she voted for the underlying legislation, we got no Republican support. Even though 16 Republican members of the Senate, who are still members today, led by then Leader McConnell in 2006, voted to extend the Voting Rights Act. So I don't know what's different today than it was in 2006 when they voted that way. They're all still in the Senate. They should have voted with us. But when they didn't, then the question was, do we change the rules to create a limited exception to ensure that the most fundamental of all rights, the right to vote, which leads to everything else, was preserved? Each state will decide for themselves in terms of their parties how they respond to how members voted. I respect that they have that right, and obviously everybody faces the consequence for the way they cast their votes.
And Senator McConnell, who you just mentioned, he had to do some cleanup after he says he misspoke on voting rights this week. Let's revisit his initial remarks and his two-part clarification.
What's your message for voters of color who are concerned that without the John L. Lewis Voting Rights Act, they're not going to be able to vote in the midterm?
Well, the concern is misplaced, because if you look at the statistics, African American voters are voting in just as high a percentage as Americans. I want to take an opportunity at the outset here to address the outrageous mischaracterization of my history and record on voting rights and race relations as a result of inadvertently leaving out the word almost in my comments the other day. The omitted word is all, not almost. Sorry.
You seem to be struggling there with that cleanup in addition to the initial comment. Your response, Senator?
Look, he may have made an inadvertent mistake, but I will just say this. I posited on the Senate floor when I was speaking in favor of the voting rights legislation, why is it that Republicans seem to have a problem with having ballot boxes in minority communities, drop boxes in minority communities, and say that in its minority communities it creates fraud, but when you have ballot drop-off boxes in non-minority communities, there is no such fraud? Maybe we got our answer.
And your thoughts on folks like Governor Ron DeSantis setting up election police forces?
This falls in line with everything that we see being revealed about President Trump's, in essence, effect of a coup. As a Senate Foreign Relations Committee chair, I call out Democratic backsliding across the globe. Well, we came really close here in the United States to something I could never have imagined would have happened. And when we talk about Governor DeSantis having a special police force on elections, it reminds me of the secret police. This is not what happens in a democracy. This is not what happens in a democracy that is supposed to be a beacon of light to the rest of the world. It's really heinous, it's outrageous, and it should be condemned roundly by everyone.
All right, Senator Bob Menendez, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.